Hello and welcome to the Soccer Curious podcast, the beautiful game explained, in our continuing series, the World Cup for Newbies. On today's episode, we're checking the vibes after the U.S. men's stunning defeat to Belgium in the round of 16. We'll explore what happened, including, of course, the Belgian red card controversy, and what it all means for the USMNT and American soccer. We'll also look forward to the World Cup final coming up next week and see if we can pick the winner. My name is Brian Peter Falk. Joining me, as always, the acting guru and nutmeg king himself, Gary Marks. Hey, Gary.
Nutmeg!
There have been a lot of them. And, of course, now that you've called yourself the nutmeg king, I see every nutmeg and think of you. So that's sort of nice.
That's my mission.
And you're being successful. Soccer journalist who actually attended the U.S.-Belgium game in Seattle. Welcome back, Chandrima Chatterjee. Hello, Chandrima.
Hi, guys.
Chandrima the dream.
Guys. Thought it would be a dream. It was not a dream.
Oh, no, it's terrible. Can't wait to hear all about it, though. And, of course, our favorite Sirius XM DJ, Mark Hamilton. Welcome, Mark.
Hola.
Okay, this is, I will say after the U.S.-Belgium defeat, which was pretty crushing, I definitely had to take 24 hours to just kind of process my feelings about it. Did not do a sort of a post game like I've been doing for the other ones. I just couldn't take it. But now we're back. Now I can feel like we can be a little more analytical about it. So let's just do a vibe check of where we are. Chandrima, you were there at the game, so let's start with you. Where are you feeling now about the U.S. and about the World Cup in general? What's your vibe?
Ooh, so here I have a rule now, Brian, because of the journalism part. I never go in as a full fan, and I keep my expectations kind of moderate to optimistic,
Good.
right?
That's good for stress.
As we discussed, my biggest fear was that we would pull the same kind of stuff we pulled during last cycle against the Netherlands. That was my big fear historically. So
Right.
what shocked me was that happened within 5 or 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And I was texting you guys like, what is this?
What is happening right now? So would you
up.
say your vibes on the U.S. pretty negative at the moment, despite your journalistic balance?
The worst was sitting amongst the fans and listening to all the qualms and like, oof, it was really painful because it's different than when you're in a press box,
Of course.
And they were so frustrated and so upset. And all I could say was, guys, Belgium is ranked really high for a reason, So that
Waffles, mostly.
yes, many highly ranked.
Chocolate.
Yeah. I'm waiting for Gary
Chocolate.
to say something Belgian too. But yeah, I just.
Yeah.
My
All right,
vibe is,
fair.
look, nothing has changed.
Got it.
Or after, nothing has changed.
Okay, so
Respect
Gary,
law.
what's your vibe on the World Cup at the moment as we are winding down toward the very end?
As one of the resident newbies, I typically compare it to another sport. And like, for me, it was like, you think Jake Paul is a really good fighter until he faces a really good fighter.
That is a good analogy.
And then you realize, he's not so good. But as a run, I think, we achieved what we achieved in 1994. So, you were saying, Brian, that it's probably not going to be great for soccer, but, kids remember impressions. And,
Right.
And I think there are a lot of kids around the country who, saw us defeat Paraguay 4-1 and might be motivated to play soccer in the future.
Mark, what do you think? What's your vibe now that about the World Cup, and you've got World Cup themed beer and you seem really into it? Show us your beer. There it is. World Cup themed beer can.
America.
America. What's your vibe, Mr. Hamilton?
So I was reminded that I grew up outside of Boston as a Red Sox fan, and 86 years of disappointment doesn't just stay in that one spot, So
Yeah.
My expectations, I honestly didn't see them getting by Belgium. I thought it was a possibility because I think the hype got me. I do think that the noise around the team distracted them.
Yeah.
It fired up Belgium.
Yeah.
Belgium is an infinitely better team. Those European teams smoke. I mean, just look at who's still left,
Yep.
with the exception of Argentina.
Yep.
So I wasn't really surprised. I was disappointed. I'll say that. And I wonder if the game against Paraguay was maybe an anomaly. Paraguay didn't realize that the U.S. was quite as good as they are. They came out flat and 4-1. They seem to be a much better team moving on after they played the United States.
All right. Okay, so that's
my vibe.
Okay, so that's all the vibes, which I would say are sort of mixed negative at the moment, which is totally fair, and that's I think where they should be, at least concerning the U.S. So, for those of you who are still trying to kind of make sense of the game, who've tuned in and are listening to our pod, let's just do a quick recap. So, Belgium's plan going into this game clearly was to kind of stifle the best part of the U.S. team, which has been our midfield, really. If you think of Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Malik Tillman, the three of our best players in that sort of triangle in the midfield, which we've discussed before. So Belgium sort of stacked their midfield with like an extra player, sometimes an overload of players, and that forced the U.S. to play out on the wings. So that's okay for the U.S. on paper, because who's out on our wing? On our left side, we have Christian Pulisic, who you may have heard of. He's on a commercial or two. And on our right side, we have Serginho Dest, who is sort of a really good one-on-one ball skill dribbler, got a lot of pace, plays in the Dutch league and all that stuff. And so the U.S. shouldn't fear having to get the ball to the outside and not being a little congested in the middle. The problem was that, as Chandrima is alluding to, the U.S. never really got out of the tunnel. Like, from the very first moments of this game, I was actually up at my family homestead watching this game, and I was there with my mom. And my mother, who knows nothing about soccer, in the first 5 minutes, she was sort of going, the U.S. doesn't look very good. They don't seem to be able to complete a pass. I was like, yeah. I mean, she watched me play soccer in high school. That's probably the last time she's seen a soccer game. And she was like, aren't they supposed to be completing the passes to each other? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that would be good. So then in the 9th minute, we give up a goal. And it's a goal you should never give up, because there are 3 American players. When you see the still shot of them all looking up at a ball up in the air and no one attacks the ball, and it ends up going to a Belgian player and ends up getting to Charles de Ketelaere, who, for context, that dude, this tall Belgian dude who scored 2 goals for Belgium, so he plays in the Italian league for a team called Atalanta, not to be confused with Atlanta, Atalanta, and he has scored 3 goals in this World Cup. In the entire season that he just played, he scored 3 goals. I mean, we made that guy look like Kylian Mbappe, and he ain't. Trust me. So anyway, that 9th minute giving up that goal, I think, really hurt us. It did not hurt us anywhere near as much as 10 minutes after halftime, giving up a real clunker where Matt Freese, our goalkeeper, came out, completely whiffed, kicked the turf, duffed a ball. Tim Ream was streaking back to try to protect the goal. The ball went right past him, and he couldn't stop it, because that was 3-1 instead of 2-1. 2-1 you can come back from in soccer. 3-1 is very, very difficult, and I think anybody who follows the team understood that, given the way the team was playing and given the dynamics of the game and how Belgium had come out, that game was over in like the 55th minute or whenever that 3rd goal for Belgium was scored. Forget the 4th goal at the end. That's garbage time. The U.S. had already waved the white flag. So, that's the Belgium recap. I mean, Chandrima, what was the vibe? I actually felt like at halftime the U.S. came out in the second half on the front foot, and it looked like they were going to be better. I'm assuming the energy coming out for the second half at the stadium in Seattle was pretty great, right?
Not so much.
Oh, no,
I would
really?
say the team's energy was higher with the subs coming on, but
yeah,
in the stands, it was I heard it from other reporters actually, and they knew better than me because I wasn't at the other games. The crowd was not as amped up as it was in prior games. The
But
environment,
not from the beginning. You mean like
well,
after
no,
we gave up a
from the
goal?
beginning. So I got those
Oh.
comments like within 15 minutes.
Huh.
So it was, I think so that it was pretty apparent early on who Belgium was and what they were doing to
Yeah, it seemed like
Belgium.
that.
And also our midfield was complete. I mean, just was it there? I mean, it just felt like yes, it was there, but they couldn't compete.
Couldn't get out.
Yeah, and right away, Christian Pulisic, like people were pretty disappointed. I know some people were like, "Is he even out there?" Yes, he's out there.
He was not good on the day. And the other thing I will say is, before I go back to you guys and just ask about your experience watching the game, was that the other person for me that I said again to my mother from the very beginning was Serginho Dest is having a terrible day. Like Dest could not get on the ball.
Yeah.
He was passing to the wrong team. He was trying to dribble guys and losing the ball over and over. And I said they have to make a switch there. And at halftime they took him out.
Right.
And moved to a different idea, which was we'll put in another central midfielder to stop that Belgian overload, which did work. Like, again, tactically, they made an adjustment that actually did work. We suddenly had more room to play in the middle. We were connecting passes in the middle. But then in the 57th minute, giving up that goal was just an absolute disaster. And there was nothing we could do about it. Once that happened, the U.S., I just don't think they were ever destined to recover. So let's just talk about viewing it from a basic perspective and looking how the team came out. Gary, you're a big sports guy, even though you don't know a lot about soccer. What was your impression of the team, the U.S. team, and how they came out for this game?
Well, kind of actually watching this game gave me a historical perspective of what may be going wrong with the U.S. Team. One is we need goalies. Like people have to be able to play goalie.
It's a great
great
point.
And the other thing is, as is typically American, it seems to me that everybody who comes out for soccer now wants to score, wants to be a striker or in the front. And we, as Chandrima said, midfield and backfield, we looked really weak. The defense lacked.
It was terrible.
I think cultivating, it's beyond it. Clearly we have talent, but it's beyond that. It's cultivating people who are strong in all 11 positions, not just the front.
Mark, what'd you think?
I think, well, all of that is something that I would agree with. I might take it a step forward and say it's simply not part of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
This game is not a cultural happening. This isn't something that kids just go do. They're in leagues. I don't have children, but my understanding is a couple of you do, and where I know you do, Brian, and you were very heavily involved in soccer all throughout their childhood. And there are kids who play organized soccer, and then there are all the other kids. There are not kids playing soccer in the street. You don't go by a park and see a pickup game.
Yep.
It's just not something. So whether we have talent or not, we do, but it isn't part of the culture. So it's not I don't want to say innate because it is learned, but it's just not something that our kids are doing from a very young age. So we're at a disadvantage right off the bat when it comes to playing against the rest of the world, where this is the game. They don't have, the other four major sports that we have.
Yep.
And Brian, Gary made a great point that everybody wants to be the striker. Everybody wants to hit home runs in baseball. Everybody wants to be the quarterback in football. Everybody wants to score the goals.
Yep.
But these are team sports, and you need to have players in all of those positions. And there needs to be respect there. And I wonder if that's another American thing where we don't often
That's interesting.
give praise and respect to the folks that are doing the unglorified work.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Very interesting.
I do think I feel hopeful because, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 1994, after that performance, there was a big surge of soccer interest, and it pretty much is credited to giving birth to MLS. And I do feel that it will be possibly the same here. And, I think kids will remember the Paraguay game and Balogun and the Tillman. It was the Tillman free kick. Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are poster moments that kids will remember. And I think it'll help next time out. But yes, I think Brian's right. Mark is right, is that we have to cultivate people who do the little things.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So here's what I will say is that there's sort of like what's popular now kind of in the media in the dissection of that poor performance by the U.S. is sort of like these different theories as to what went wrong. So I just want to run through a couple of them and not get too far into the weeds, and we will definitely talk about the Balogun part of this, but the red card controversy in Trump. But I want to start with the big one, which is the U.S. plays all these games: Paraguay, Australia, Turkey, Bosnia, but what all those teams have in common is they are not as highly ranked as the U.S. in the FIFA rankings. And then they play Belgium, who outranks them, and for the first time they play a top 10 opponent. The U.S. is ranked like 16th, 17th, top 20. But first time they play a top 10 opponent, they fold the lawn chair and it's all over. So I do want to point out a couple of things that I think are interesting. So one metric that they use in soccer to determine like how good is your team is they look at all the players on the team and say who's playing in the top 5 leagues in the world. Okay, and those top 5 leagues are England, Spain, Italy, France, Germany. Those are the 5. Okay. Those are the ones with the most money, most experienced players, all the Champions League, which is the tournament that is just under the World Cup in importance. It's played yearly. The Champions League is always won by a team from one of those 5 leagues. Literally always. So if you look at the U.S. team, the U.S. starting 11 had 8 players from those top 5 leagues. The Belgium starting 11 on the day, now again, they did not start some of their bigger players like Lukaku and Kevin De Bruyne and whatever, but the starting 11 for Belgium also had 8 players from the top 5 leagues. So the other metric that is often used in determining a value of a team is what is called their transfer market value, which is if you got rid of your team today and had to sell everybody off, what is that team worth? So the starting 11 for Belgium, their transfer market value was about $270 million. The transfer market value for the U.S. starting 11 was about $240 million. So they're pretty comparable in terms of one team versus the other team. So while I do buy the argument, Belgium is the better team, no question, but they're not so much better that they should, it's obvious that they're going to walk in and woodshed the U.S. 4-1. 4-1 is a very outsized score for what they should be doing against Belgium. So I do think it came down to, and Chandrima, you may have a much better take on this since you were there live, it's just the U.S. from the very beginning, every player, literally every single one, with possibly the exception of Malik Tillman, who is probably our best player of the tournament, had a really shite day. They just could not connect passes. They could not deal with the Belgian the high press they were doing to close down all of our players. They couldn't play quickly enough. And our worst players are players who are the least skilled, or in Tim Ream's case, at one time was very skilled, but is now 38 years old. But to your point, Gary, Matt Freese, the goalkeeper, we always worried. Those of us who've followed this for years have always worried, is that guy going to be ready for the World Cup? And he was not, and made a absolutely colossal mistake.
Yeah, that mistake was
terrible.
Just terrible.
It killed the game. That mistake cost us the game because you're at a point where we're on our front foot, down only a goal, and pressing for a goal. And you know what? If we get that goal, it's 2-2. Now it's a whole different ball game, and the momentum shifts. Anyway, it's not, to me, it's a bit reductive to just say Belgium was so much better. Belgium's a top 10 European team, and of course they're going to beat the U.S. But it was a very popular line in the press. And, now Belgium's been knocked out anyway in a game that they were not even close to, to winning that game, really, against Spain. So,
which makes you wonder what the U.S. versus Spain
would have been like. Would have been really fascinating. But anyway, so I just want to get that out there. This sort of theory of the case that the U.S. was so outgunned, I don't actually think is true. I think what's more true is the U.S. was slightly outgunned, but that gulf opened up much, much wider just by a really crappy performance.
They were out-finessed.
I mean, I just have to add, part of what I think we all consider the mark of a high-quality team, right? A top 10 team globally is the ability to play consistently, no matter what rank your opponent is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think one of the, I mean, I know we're going to get into systems later, but for me, I feel like, you know how at the beginning of this podcast, we were talking about the different confederations that this globe has?
Yeah.
And we're in CONCACAF, right?
Correct.
The fact that...
Which is North America, Central America, and the Caribbean.
Exactly. I feel a lot of people feel the fact that we do not play consistently other leagues, right? Other
I've heard
more
this.
competitive teams, especially in Europe, right? Puts us at a disadvantage because the players for the U.S. don't know how to play against those other confederations, right? They all have different styles, and I really think like it's not about,
and they're better, by the way.
I know. I mean, I don't want to say that, but here's the thing: like you're only as good, if not slightly better, than your competition. Like you can't really. I mean, I don't know how Argentina is an exception, but they have been playing the sport forever, right? And it's culturally theirs too. So again, like we're just never, in my opinion, going to reach that level. We're not going to compete against France and actually not be, completely annihilated. So with Belgium, I agree. Like it should have been like maybe 3-2, 3-1. But yeah, right away you could see it in their heads, and that's why it was in every single player just about.
It was really, I've never seen, and again, the U.S. is used to this frustration, but what I will say is that performance, even for a U.S. team that is sometimes, grittier than they are skilled, has always sort of been the, kind of the way the U.S. team has been thought about. They're going to go out there with a lot of piss and vinegar because they just don't have the skill.
Right.
Now they do have the skill.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, guys like Pulisic and Weston McKennie and Malik Tillman and those guys play every week in front of like 75,000 screaming fans. So it's hard to say the pressure got to them. Like, I understand it's the World Cup and all that, but like they're used to high pressure games, all the ultras out there screaming, flares and smoke and shit happening. These guys play in big leagues and play big games and play in the Champions League. So I don't know. It is still inexplicable to me why they folded the tent like so badly from the jump. Like from the beginning, they were completely and utterly outclassed. Okay, so let's turn to what is going to be our favorite topic and probably will take up the bulk of the rest of this episode. So the Balogun red card. So we talked about this in the last episode. I then did a follow-up, like just solo explainer for people just to say, here's what happened and here's how it all went down, because it sort of is bananas. So the question for us to wrestle with today, though, is do we think the Balogun red card controversy, it affected the players? What do we think?
I'll say that it positively affected the Belgian players. The Belgian players were fired up, and they rubbed it in the face of the U.S. team after they won.
nothing that unifies people than against something than Donald Trump. I mean, if you're outside of America.
Yeah, where he is hated, by the way.
Yeah.
And the idea that he, called up Gianni Infantino and basically said, hey, you need to do me a solid. I need my player back in the team. It definitely fired up the Belgians. And per what you're saying, Mark, afterwards, they made it very clear on social media and by doing their little Trump dance and all that stuff, what they thought about that. When you hear bulletin board material, we gave them an enormous bulletin board with enough material for to
100%
to go out with a lot of energy to win that game.
Yeah, they probably had posted a photo of Trump overhead when they left to go into the stadium.
They probably did.
Yeah.
They probably did.
But on the other side, guys, I don't think anyone's going to come out and say he got in the heads of the U.S. players and made it play out the way it did on our end, right? There were 2 games going on there. One was for Belgium and one was for us. And no matter how many times I replay Matt Freese coming out of the box so dramatically, like he could take those players out. I mean, I was like,
take them out.
Screaming.
Exactly.
I was screaming because I was like, how many times has Belgium proven that they can take us out? I just was like, this is appalling. Like that you would even think that was the smart play.
Yeah, and look, and per Gary's point about you need a good goalkeeper, and I've said this before on this pod, but it bears repeating. Over the last 3 decades of soccer play in American soccer and the American men's national team, one of the hallmarks of the team, when we were putting college players on the pitch because we didn't have professional players, one thing we always had were absolutely incredible goalkeepers. Okay, back at 94 was Tony Miola, this Italian dude from Jersey who had the mullet and everything and stood on his head to win games, to Tim Howard, who then, played a million years in the English Premier League for Manchester United and Everton and stood on his head in the 2014 World Cup against Belgium. All of that was amazing. We've always had this amazing history of goalkeepers, and it has been a talking point for literally 2 years that our goalkeeping was not good enough. And in those other games, Paraguay, Australia, Bosnia, they never had much of an attack. Matt Freese was never really challenged. That being said, early in this game, he made a great save. He made a goal-saving, great save, diving to his right to parry a ball away, and he was great. But the problem with some of these American goalkeepers in the era in which goalkeepers are not just expected to save balls, but also expected to play out from the back and pass the ball, not just kick it 60 yards down the field, but pass the ball. And so it's the era of what they call the sweeper keeper, meaning you're almost like a sweeping defender at the back and you're also a goalkeeper. So you have to be really good with your feet. We don't have goalkeepers good with their feet. Both the Matts have always sucked at that, both of them. Mm-hmm. And so now, we look back and go, yeah, Matt Freese was not the guy. On the day, he messed it up and duffed his cleat into the turf, and, it was a disaster.
I don't know how they pick the goalkeepers who were on this team. And I wonder, there probably is, a large contingency of college goaltenders out there that are like, I could have done much better today, and shame on me for having not tried out for the team.
Of course. Well, so this leads to sort of the last theory that I want to explore here. And this is something I will probably handle at length in a different episode because it's a huge topic. But what is being talked a lot about, and I want to make sure our introductory fans kind of have the basics of this argument, is that per what you're saying, Mark, about not having a soccer culture in the United States, we also don't have the same youth development pipeline as it exists in Europe. So all these top teams, from Germany to Belgium to Portugal to Spain to France to England, they treat youth development of soccer differently than we do in the United States. In those countries, soccer training, especially for boys and girls who show themselves to be really adept at the game is heavily subsidized by governments, and it's heavily subsidized by professional teams who are looking to build a pipeline of players. So if you show aptitude literally at like age 8 or 9 or 10, you can get into a pipeline where if you get good enough, you will then be in a development program for like, Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, or Manchester City in the English Premier League, or Benfica in Portugal, or whatever. And you move through that system. It literally costs you and your family $0. In the United States, we have a pay-to-play system where at the very earliest level, if you play like AYSO, you pay like very little. It's like a couple $100, and it's everybody plays, and it's recreational, and it's totally fun. And then at the other side of the system, the Major League Soccer teams do have a development pipeline that's called MLS Next, where you can move into a system where you're playing on a high wattage team. That also costs $0. But that describes only literally a few thousand kids across the country. We have 2.5 million youth soccer players in the United States, and the vast majority of those, their families are paying thousands of dollars to play in these leagues. And I know this intimately because both of my kids were high-level soccer players playing in big-time leagues, and it does cost thousands of dollars to get your kids through those leagues, plus airfare, hotel fees, restaurants, all the other shit that comes with it. And what the dogma is currently in journalism is everyone's looking at that going, that is not how you develop players, because A, when you're charging that amount of money, you're excluding players who can't pay. B, you're fostering an ecosystem that accepts mediocre players because you get more money the more players you have. So they create B teams and C teams and all that of players who are not good enough, and they're drinking America beer. Oh, I see what you're saying. I get where you're going. Mark's holding up his America beer because that's America, and that's late-stage capitalism.
That's the American way. They have found a way to profit on mediocrity.
And the last point, it's really important, is in European leagues, in most of these youth leagues, they don't keep score or keep a tally of what team is the best one until well into their teenage years. Because the point is, develop good players, don't focus on the wins and losses. That's not a very American thing to do, because we like to focus on the wins and losses. And when you're charging people money, no one wants to join a league that it doesn't care about the wins. So these leagues and these coaches have to deliver wins so that their teams look the best, and they can say, this kid was the champion of whatever, and they become a pipeline to move kids into D1 soccer programs in college. But that has not been effective, and I'm not just saying that. So before the World Cup started back in May, a university in Alabama called Samford University, which I had never heard of, released this report. And what they had done was gone through and audited successful American soccer players. They had looked at Christian Pulisic, McKennie, all these dudes, and they went through and they sort of said, how do you build the best American soccer player? And to nobody who follows this surprise, what they determined was the best American soccer players are not built in America.
Yeah.
They're made overseas.
That makes sense.
Because our system isn't good enough. And literally one of the stats that I thought was so fascinating was in this last cycle of players, every single attacking player that the U.S. was putting on the pitch, every single one, none of them had played their youth soccer in the United States. Not one. Because attacking players need to be great on the ball. They have to have great vision. They have to make amazing passes. They have to be able to strike at the net. There's a lot of skill involved. And those guys, Christian Pulisic, yes, he played some youth soccer in the United States, but when he was 17 years old, he moved to Germany. You know, Malik Tillman grew up in Germany. Anthony Robinson, if you hear him speak, he speaks with a British accent. He was raised in England.
Yeah.
And Fuller and Balogun, right? Speaks with a British accent, raised in London. We don't have the development pipeline to create the players that we need to compete at the highest levels.
Yeah, Brian, I'm totally in agreement with you here. And I want to combine it with what Mark said about culture.
Yeah.
Part of the culture is that, like it's not this weird structure that Brian just describes to you exists in the U.S. And like we talk about Morocco. I don't know if you guys watched Morocco and fell in love with them, but it's not magic that they're number 6 now in the world.
No,
they were 80th, 82nd before they changed to a different system in 2008, right? They were all the way in the 80s. And now they're number 6 because the government took over and created a system, opened up the opportunity to everybody, right? And now look at them. It doesn't take that long. That's the thing. We could easily have done it, and we could easily still do it. So it's not like the hope is gone. It's just there has to be a major investment by the entire country.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that after we finish cleaning up the reflecting pool and building the ballroom and the arch and ending the war in Iran, we'll turn our attention to
It's probably
soccer.
4th or 5th.
Think about the morale, though. That'll be my platform.
All right, so that's all been very interesting. It is such a disappointing loss for the U.S. against Belgium. So much more to talk about this. I'm sure we'll get to it in a later episode. But we've got to move on to talk about the rest of the World Cup, which we're going to do right after this. Welcome back to the Soccer Curious Podcast, The Beautiful Game Explained. And we are now moving on to talk about the rest of the World Cup, which is wrapping up pretty quickly. Like the next sort of 8 days, this will all be over. We're in the middle of the trying to pick the semifinalists now. We're going to have an amazing semifinal that's France against Spain. We have 2 games that are coming up later today. We're recording this on Saturday the 11th that will determine the next 2 semifinalists. It's really going to be, even without the U.S., an incredible finish to the World Cup. So let's think about, now that we've seen some soccer and seen these powerhouse teams play, who do we think is the best matchup in the final and who will win? So, Chandrima, why don't we start with you, since you have the most knowledge of anybody on this panel about these teams. So, what's your thought about who we know France and Spain are going to be in the semis.
Yeah.
In these other 2 games today, we have Norway versus England. We have Argentina versus sort of a dark horse in Switzerland. So, how do you foresee this all playing out?
So first of all, I would like to say France versus Spain is like a final I wish we could have.
I know.
We won't.
That's what everyone's saying. It's really the final, even though it's a semifinal. Yeah.
Well, that game is going to be epic. Honestly, I do believe I'm going to pick. I wish you would ask me last, but I am picking France. I mean,
it's tough.
Guys, that's just how it is right now. It's looking like it's France's year again. But this match today between Norway and England.
So good.
And I want to be, look, England, Brian's going to probably explain England's run of English luck in the World Cup.
Yes, we have discussed it before about the dark cloud of England. Yes.
So it's like my heart wants to be like, oh gosh, just give Harry Kane something for all these years of dedication. But also, I love the Cinderella stories. So I would love to see a Viking World Cup, and Holland, whenever he plays against Arsenal, it's like I feel like this. I know, like someone's choking me.
Yes.
But I also want to be like, he's only 25. He can do this again. He's gonna have another shot. But I would love to see either one of them go next.
Okay.
So
great.
You tell
me, Gary, what do you think? Like you've seen some of these teams play. Like these are the powerhouses that are left, with the exception of Switzerland, which again is not as much of a powerhouse team, and I think they're going to have a real struggle against Argentina. But as we've seen in these games, things happen. What's your thought on what the best semifinal and final matchup is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, mostly with Chandrima in terms of France seeming to be the biggest powerhouse out there still. I'm going to root for England, and I think Argentina has a good shot as well.
Yeah. So then we get England. So we have France, Spain, and one. Let's assume England and Argentina in the other one, which is a big assumption, by the way. I'm not advocating it. I would love to see Norway get through. That would be hilarious. And I will say also the New York Times just had an article in today or yesterday about how Erling Haaland has really captured America's imagination. I don't know if you've seen this thing where there's like this young woman who's an influencer about doing makeup and hair, but she looks a lot like Erling Haaland. And so now she's got millions of followers, and she's doing like Erling Haaland's hairstyles, and Erling Haaland even DM'd her. Right, because she does look a lot like Erling Haaland, and he's like, for people, what I love about that is, Chandrima and I know Erling Haaland super well. We've seen him play dozens of games, but for the American casual fan who has never heard of this guy, I just think, wow, this is like, finding a superhero in your midst, because the guy is so incredible. Mark, what do you think? What's your dark horse matchup? Who's pulling at your heartstrings? Who would you like to see take the whole thing?
Well, I have to run on the Erling Haaland thing very briefly, because as the newbie who hasn't seen a lot, he does appeal, I think, to Americans, because he just sort of loafs around.
He does.
And then the ball shows up and he scores.
Yep.
And that's how Americans, I think, sometimes would just that would be the best way to go about it. I'll loaf around and then score the goal when the time comes.
And he does do that. Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
I am in love with the Norwegian celebration, the rowing maneuver.
The rowing is pretty dope.
The fact that the celebration personifies teamwork, I think, is amazing. There's something underlying in the psyche there.
So good.
I love baby Swiss cheese. I'm a huge fan.
Okay.
I don't have enough money to know about their banking system, other than I don't have enough money to be involved in it.
Yeah.
I have been converted for some reason. I don't generally like the obvious superstars. Messi is like a god. He is something special. Can they bring it all the way up to the wire and then pull it off again? How many times will they allow that to happen? I don't know. I think France is like a locomotive that can't be stopped. There isn't a thing in that country I wouldn't eat. And I love women with dogs on bicycles and baguettes. Everything about that is magic.
Works for you.
And England, this is in the month of July. I can't root for England in the month of July. It's just not a thing Americans should be doing.
Fair.
I don't believe.
Yeah.
Harry Kane, tremendous. Yeah, I'd like to see him succeed, but my life doesn't change. I think Argentina in the end is, I feel like Argentina is going to sneak by France at the last minute, maybe in a shootout in the final.
Oh, wow. So like the last World Cup, that would be amazing. Yeah, it's funny, the row, just briefly on this, and then I'll give you my predictions and we can wrap this up. But the row reminds me so much of the 2018 World Cup, which is a World Cup the U.S. did not qualify for. It was in Russia, and Iceland qualified. And Iceland was doing this clap thing that really, it was so cool. It was just amazing. And I remember that, like, the Prime Minister of Iceland, I believe it's a Prime Minister, I want to say.
They have a president. They had the first female president.
Thank you.
In the
Okay,
world.
I'll go with that.
That's
Somebody,
right, yeah.
some higher up, the president of Iceland, had done a Twitter post that just said, "Winter is coming." And
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
come
good.
on. It was so dope.
Yeah.
So Norway with their
I love
row and the
Iceland.
drum and like Erling Haaland and, Martin Odegaard, is an Arsenal fan. Yeah, Martin can do no wrong for me. He's a great Arsenal player. So my prediction is, I think England gets through and beats Norway, even though I'm sort of rooting for Norway today. England gets through on Norway. Argentina beats Switzerland. And then England takes Argentina to get to the final.
Whoa.
And France
Nice.
France beats England in the final.
Wow.
In my opinion, that is a having your cake, your Cornish pasty, and eating it too.
Okay.
If you
And
are
Englanding
if
it
you are an
too.
England if you're an England fan, getting to the final it has to be good enough for you because it's been.
I'll take a
it's been-
Sunday roast for that.
It's been that's a beef Wellington. Like that's decades of futility for you that you finally, and in my opinion, you still get the monkey off your back even when you don't win it. And France, you want to see a team that is playing without regard of the other team. They're just playing their game and like playing with their food. That's France. France is just forget it. Their cleats aren't touching the grass.
Yeah.
They're just like cruising around. Michael Olise is an incredible player, and Kylian Mbappe. I mean, yeah, great. He's going to score 1 million goals, but the rest of those guys, Dembele, Doué, they're not stoppable.
Mm-hmm.
They are not stoppable.
They are the best
Yeah.
team.
It's crazy. So I think that's the sense of inevitability
Right.
that I get from all of that.
Do you want to tell them?
And they have the champagne.
And they do have
grow
the
it.
champagne, so they're ready to go.
I mean, they're beatable. They're beatable, but I
Well,
don't
every
think
team
they're-
is beatable. I just don't know. I don't think Argentina has it. Again,
Not this
Argentina
time.
has brought it back from the brink a couple times. Look at that Egypt game where I do think they benefited from sort of a strange refereeing moment, which we don't have time to get into. But in my refereeing opinion, weak. So they benefited from that to sort of, and Egypt also folded a little bit to give up goals, but they've been on the brink a couple of times in a way that France has not. So
Right.
France, if momentum is important, if confidence is important, they have it in spades. All right, that's all for today. We've got to go. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe. Tell your friends. If you have a comment or question, you can also email us at soccercuriouspodcast@gmail.com. And thanks so much for listening to the Soccer Curious Podcast, which is the inaugural season of the Sports Curious Network. Learn the game. Thanks to Mark. Thanks to Gary. Thanks to Chandrima. We will see you soon. Goodbye.